Great. I hope you're having a good show. And I'm Elaine Ellingham, President, CEO of Omai Gold Mines. I think you've heard, if you've been here a couple meetings, you've probably heard a lot about Guyana. So I think I'll skip over anything kind of on the background of Guyana. But so the Omai project is in Guyana. We have, over the last 3 years, had very rapid discovery. And we powered through to a preliminary economic assessment, which is a huge milestone for a small company. So we're pretty proud of that. Obviously, I'll be making quite a few forward-looking statements. So the Omai project, it is a large past producer. In fact, when it was in production, it was the largest primary gold producer in South America. So we have actually, in 3 years, taken it. We've had 343-101 resources. We're now at 4.3 million ounces. And I would say that I think this establishes Omai as one of the significant gold camps in the Guyana Shield. Between what was produced and what we have, that's over 8 million ounces. So that's a pretty high-level mining camp. So with respect to the ownership, we have 100% ownership in it. It's very simple land tenure from the Guyanese government, and we just renewed the main prospecting license in April, so it's good for another 3 to 5 years. So. Yeah, this was a great year for us. We did the updated resource, we powered through the PEA, and then we did a brokered financing for $13 million. Over 90% of that was large funds, so we welcomed quite a few new quality shareholders, which is a great milestone for us as well. So the catalyst for us, one thing I would say right out of the gate, is our PEA is what I call a baseline PEA, and that's very critical to realize, because it's only on 45% of our resources and it's only on one of our 2 deposits. But I think it was important, when you have a past producing property, it's important to actually show a path and to show that this thing was, it has a completely new life ahead of it. So we started drilling immediately after we closed the financing with one drill. It was drilling at about 2,000 meters a month out of the gate. So we added another drill a couple of weeks ago, and I was down there with one of my new people. And so we're basically looking at about 4,000 meters of drilling a month. So we know we have lots of fantastic landscape that we think we can significantly expand the Wenot deposit. So I'll walk you through that, and I understand a lot of people don't get through their slides, so I just want to make sure you see some of the interesting stuff. So with respect to access, I think you have seen quite a bit about Guyana, but we are actually about 165 kilometers south of the capital city of Georgetown, which is on the Atlantic, almost on the Caribbean. And the road is paved to that town of Linden. And Linden has an open pit bauxite mine that has been open for decades. And so you have the appropriate skill set for open pit mining for sure. And in fact, when the Omai mine was in production, over 90% of the workforce lived there. And I guess the other key thing is you've probably heard a lot about the new offshore oil discoveries in Guyana that is really transforming the economy. So they still have a lot of history of mining, and so the government and the communities are very committed to redeveloping and developing new large-scale mines. They know the job opportunities it brings to the remote areas. So as part of that, the government is building out the infrastructure with all the new wealth from the offshore oil. And so we are the great recipient because they've started to pave from Linden down on that road that goes down towards Brazil. So it's paved to about 38 kilometers now. I was on it a couple of weeks ago. You can see me in the bottom left there. That's a spectacular road. So they're way behind schedule, but maybe in another 8 months or a year, that'll be paved to within 10 kilometers of the Omai property. I think you've probably heard, but the Guyanese government is very, very pro-development. And one of the special things about Omai was this was formerly one of the poorest countries in South America, except for when the Omai mine was in production. And that was really the heyday of economic prosperity. And many people had the best jobs of their lives with their very premium salaries relative to other Guyanese. They were able to send their kids to school in the U.S., and basically it built many very favorable lives. So Omai has a special place because there's no one in Guyana that doesn't have a relative or a friend that worked there. So again, very positive energy. So we have two orogenic gold deposits. As we know, those are the very prolific ones with deep roots in Canada, Ontario, Quebec, West Africa. And we have two deposits. You can see the one on the right, that's an intrusive hosted deposit. Whoops, sorry. And the upper part, the upper part here produced 2.4 million ounces down to a depth of 250 meters. Now it's an intrusion, so they knew it continued at depth. There was this late sill that cut it across, but when the operating company was acquired by IM Gold, they actually, the mill had been moved, so there was no mill there. But IM Gold actually drilled 46 holes, 27,000 meters, but they had just acquired Cambior, lots of other priorities. So they relinquished the project, and they did a short memo. We actually put in the first 43-101 resource on this, and it's about 1.8 million ounces at 3.25 grams per ton. That's using a 1.5 cutoff, and I'll show you why that's probably appropriate for the size and the nature of the zones. The other deposit, this is the one we focused on, shear-hosted deposit, and basically you can kind of see this is 2.4 kilometers. And I think if you think about a spot 2.4 kilometers from your home, you sort of realize exactly how vast this is. So there was mining up in the shallow area here, and they produced about 1.4 million ounces. When I saw this opportunity, it kind of looked easy because no one had drilled underneath it. The mine was shut down when the gold price was under $400. It looked easy, and in fact, it has been relatively easy. And we've drilled a few years on tight budgets, but with the drilling we've done, we've added almost 90,000 ounces per hole. So I'd like to say that speaks to our immense expertise, but it actually was fairly easy. And I want to show you why we believe also that from here on, there's a big path to a much larger deposit. So I'm not going to dwell on the PEA. We filed it, and as I said, it was a baseline, but I think it was really important for this project to show investors, basically the market in general, that this has a clear path, even where we stand today, to a development, to a developed mine. And it ends up being, for this deposit, a single super pit, even at this level. 2.4 kilometers across, along, almost 800, 900 meters across. And I want to show you that we're actually pretty shallow still. This is 90% of our PEA ounces are above 330 meters. Okay, so very shallow. So you can see at the bottom there, this is the Wenot, and it's a shear-hosted deposit, but just 400 or 500 meters away is that intrusive hosted deposit. For those of you who know in Quebec, the Sigmund-Lamaque, this is a very similar scenario. I guess these days people are using a higher gold value. If you use a $2,400 gold price, our PEA comes out about $950 million. We only have this at producing about 1.8 million ounces over a 13-year mine life. And we believe that this has a lot more legs to it than that. So just looking at it, I mentioned we've hit the ground running. We have 2 drills running now. We're contemplating adding a third, which would put us in a position to basically drill probably 10,000, 12,000 meters by Christmas. At which time our goal at this point is to probably do an updated resource in Q1. And then we'll look at what we should do with respect to an updated economic study. So on the right, you can see the project there. Again, this Wenot deposit, you can see it's typical. There's a mafic metavolcanics on the north, sedimentary sequence on the south, and along the contact, often the zone of weakness, that's where this broad shear would break, and so the shear corridor actually straddles that contact. And you can see there's a large number of subparallel zones, and they go the length of this deposit. I would point out that a lot of deposits would only be 1 or 2 zones. We're looking at 400 meters across there. So it's a very different type of gold deposit with having multiple subparallel zones. And these are all in the Wenot, they're all essentially vertical. So you can see we mostly drilled along the north side of the pit and along on this north side because it was easier. We didn't drill a lot on the south side because there had been some lost holes before I joined the company, and I was going for the easy stuff. So We've switched drill companies. We've now just, as of a month ago, we did 2 holes on the south side of this pit. And what we were doing is filling in some of these gaps. And you can see some of these zones, they just stop. And it's not because it's geological, that it stopped geologically, it's just we had no drilling in there. That's really important because in our PEA pit, some of those gaps, we call them the gap zones, the gaps end up going into our economic pit as waste, so that's a cost. And we believe at least some of those are going to come in to be mineralized material or ore. And so it goes from being a cost right through to being a revenue. So that's important. So just hold on here. So just bottom left, we'll look briefly. This is a cross-section, and again, remember I mentioned there's multiple zones. There's that contact between the volcanics on the north, sediments on the south. You've got this very persistent quartz feldspar porphyry, 15 to 35 meters wide, and you see we drilled 200 meters below, and you see some of the grades that we were getting there. I guess they're 4.77 over 22 meters and 4.9 over 16, 18 meters, something like that. So, I mean, very robust. But look at the pit. Remember, the gold price was low. When the gold price got lower, I know lots of people that worked there, they weren't actually going down on this zone. They went down on this dike corridor, and there's a series of felsic dikes, and sometimes some diorite dikes subsequently intruded them. But this was probably where the shear corridor broke the most, and this was determined to be the most profitable mining when the gold price was low. So I would also note that you see the deepest drilling we've been doing here, and on the actual dike corridor a little bit shallower. But in our step backs, we've hit additional zones in felsics and then some alteration zones in the volcanic, some of those running as much as 1.85 over 22 meters. And those ones were not mined or identified previously. Those are by virtue of us doing the step backs. So important here, you've got at the 100 meter level, you can see, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you must be deep. At even 100 meters, there's the old pit. You can see they only took off the one zone just sitting on the north side of the contact, and this is our resource. And you can see the multiple zones. We drilled mostly out this end last year, and we came up with 560,000 ounces. So look at the 350 level, and for an open pit, that's easily doable. And basically, we only would have pierced the one central zone. Some very impressive numbers along there, including 5 grams over 30 meters, 2.1 grams over 75 meters. And also that very prolific zone we drilled here in the sediments, we haven't even touched that. And that's 500 meters right there. So this zone, we need to be drilling this really easy pickings, I would say. So this just shows you quickly, and a lot of people would only, these are each 50-meter slabs, and you're looking at a series because we go across 400 meters. So a lot of companies, they would have one of these zones, one of these, and we can just keep stepping and stepping. So you can see where the mining was, mostly on that dike sequence. Here's the central shear that we've been mostly drilling, but you keep going each 50 meters across 400 meters. And here's our sediments we drilled last year. So again, just looking at a composite block model, you can see the PEA pit here. We didn't drill enough density or some shallow to get a lot of this. There's actually another 500,000 ounces in the resource at 2 grams that did not get into the economic pit. So you can only guess what one of our priorities is. And then also I just want to point out the key thing here to look at is at the bottom left, you're looking at the grade, and we do see the grade increases with depth quite substantially. So even by the time we're down at 200 meters, the slice between 200 and 300 meters, we actually, in that 100-meter slice, identified almost 1 million ounces at 1.88. We have limited drilling, some drilling. We obviously identified 720,000 ounces between 300 and 400 meters, 2.15 grams per ton. So obviously, you know, these open pit deposits, it's quite feasible to take them down to 450 meters, but notice some of the grades at depth here. And the deepest one to date is this 5.18 over 20 meters. You could probably go underground on at least 2 of those zones we're looking at after taking the pit down there. But the potential to add even as much as 1 million ounces per 100 meters is quite feasible.
Elaine, unfortunately,
that's fine.
Our time is up. If anyone has questions for Elaine, please do come and find her. She'll be around. Great to see the performance this year. Congratulations. Thank you very much.